to the July 18th, 2022 Eugene City Council Public Hearing and Work Session. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format, which enables the City Council to meet and hear from the community and take care of business while keeping everyone safe. I am presiding over tonight's meeting as the mayor is joining us remotely for health reasons. Anyone wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by following the instructions listed for this meeting on the public webcast and meeting materials webpage. There are two public hearings on tonight's agenda. Please note that members of the public who sign up to testify may speak only on the topic that is the subject of the stated hearing. So try to make sure you're signing up for the topic that you actually wish to address. For those wishing to testify during either of the public hearings, please fill out a request to speak form available on the city's public webcast and meeting materials webpage if you haven't already done so. These requests to speak forms will be used to generate the random order of speakers and correctly enter speakers' names into the public record. We will accept requests to speak forms until 5:35. For those joining the meeting by phone who wish to provide testimony and are unable to complete the request to speak form online, press *9 and the last 3 digits of your phone number will be added to the speaker's queue. As a reminder of the council meetings, rules of conduct include no flags, signs, loud or disruptive language, noise, or conduct that obstructs the business of the council. Please keep the room quiet and respectful for all speakers, though you are welcome to do wiggle fingers in silent support. Additionally, we are mindful of the transmission of COVID in our community and encourage those who are ill or who have had close contact with others who are ill to join our meetings remotely rather than in person. We also encourage attendees to spread out within the meeting space to allow 6-foot distance from each other and to wear a mask if you are comfortable doing so. We do have some available in the back of the room if you need one. So I will open our first public hearing. This is a public hearing on an ordinance extending the sunset date of safe tent and vehicle sites. And City Manager, would you please introduce the topic for us?
Sure, I can say a couple of things about it. I think this work really started in spring of 2021 when we started establishing a number of safe sleep tent sites. We've done that through a series of meetings, and to do that, you have this ordinance that you put in place that is set to expire at the end of this year, right? Is that the date? Sorry. And so what we're trying to do now is extend that date through June 30, 2024.
Thank you. Still have a tiny bit of time before it's 5:35. Sorry for the silence.
So while we wait for 5:35, I'll go ahead and just go through the information for the public hearing.
Sure.
If you have signed up to speak via Zoom, please take this time to ensure that your screen name in Zoom matches the name that you used to sign up to speak. I will announce 2 speakers' names at a time. If you are providing testimony via Zoom and you are the next speaker, I will promote you to panelist status, and when it is your turn to speak, you can unmute and turn on your camera if you wish. If you are announced as the next speaker and physically in the room, please move to the seat in the front row designated for the next speaker. When it is your turn, you may come to the podium. When you are called to speak, please state your name clearly, and for Eugene residents, your ward or neighborhood if known, before beginning your comments. You will have 3 minutes to speak. If you are watching the meeting, the timer should be visible. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of the 3 minutes. For those who have connected to the meeting via phone and don't have the benefit of seeing the timer, Please be aware that your microphone will be muted at the 3-minute mark. Please note that screen sharing or displaying information on the screen is not allowed, and any misuse of the platform or violation of the council's code of conduct will result in immediate termination of speaking privilege.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, I now open the public hearing, and staff, can you please share the list of speakers and announce the first speakers for this public hearing number 1?
And we have a total of only 1 speaker signed up for either of the public hearings for this evening. The first and only speaker will be Richard Locke.
Thank you.
Good evening. Yeah. I'd like to talk about ordinance 2650. This ordinance should be allowed to sundown on May 1st, 2023, its expiration date. As I watched the months prior to April 30th, 2021, the ordinance was needed to expedite the opening of several safe sleep spots. I remember tents and RVs everywhere. My business is located on Pacific Avenue. We had as many as 40 RV campers on our streets. We still host about 15. The message to the unhoused should be a blinking no vacancy sign for all that are coming here for our abundant service and weak public policies. A vote to extend or permanent, to make permanent this ordinance would give our city the right to make temporary camps whenever and for whatever reason. A vote to extend or make permanent, I believe that the nonprofits servicing the homeless population here in Eugene should be providing the safe sleep spots, not the city of Eugene. The homeless are here for their services. Many do not qualify for the programs within the nonprofit groups or are waiting for their turn and are still on the streets. The city of Eugene is not the regional housing provider, but is thrust into it because the county and nonprofits are not meeting the needs of their customers. Eugene must stop taking full responsibility for every person that shows up on our streets. The city needs to enforce existing ordinances and discourage camping activities throughout our city equally so that these camps are not needed at all. Let's focus on accountability first. Thanks.
Thank you. Close the public hearing. See if there's any discussion, response. Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Locke. I certainly agree that the county is responsible for housing piece. It would be nice when we eventually get to the day where the safe sleep sites aren't needed. But right now, I really feel that they are needed to give people a place to go and to help restore order to our streets and our parks, which we've been doing. So, like I said, I agree that we need to get to the point that you described, but it's still going to take a while. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilor Semple.
Thank you. I think we need to keep this going for now. We have put quite a bit of resources, time, energy, money into getting them going. They all have waiting lists. Yes, I think we need to go upstream. We are always working for more jobs, more housing, but we still have a lot of people on the streets here, and I'd rather they were able to sleep safely. So it's important to keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. I shared the story with Human Services colleagues today, so forgive me for repeating myself. I was driving downtown, and there was a woman on Charlton and 11th, right in front of St. Mary's Catholic Church. literally on her hands and knees, crawling. She had one flip-flop, a dirty dress, lots of makeup, and she was visibly in distress, possibly a mental health crisis. Her right foot had a visible sore. She was literally unable to walk. She was crawling on hands and knees. People drove by. I pulled over. Thankfully, other neighbors pulled over. One pedestrian stopped and talked with her, and I called Cahoots. And I was dismayed to learn that Cahoots had been called out earlier and left. So they presumably left her in the condition that she was in, or her condition worsened since they left. And I requested that Cahoots come back out. I tell this story because it's a fundamental failing as a society that there's a woman in our community in 2022 crawling on hands and knees with little to no help. All the more reason why I think it's not only important to extend this ordinance, but to lean in and invest as an entire community throughout the county in a stabilization center that's going to serve some 2,700 adults and get this, 1,500 at-risk youth annually. And those aren't repeat visits, those are individuals. That stabilization center is likely to open in calendar year 2025. The woman on her hands and knees can't wait to 2025. And so I hear the points that are made about the responsibility, but as an elected body, we would be shirking our duty if we didn't do something. And at the very least, that's extend this ordinance to the point where we open the stabilization center. Thank you, Council President and colleagues.
Anyone else? All right. So we'll move on to public hearing number 2. I now open a public hearing on an ordinance extending, oh, sorry, that's my script is incorrect. An ordinance transitioning transient lodging tax administration to the Department of Revenue. And City Manager, can you introduce this topic for us?
Sure. When the transient lodging tax was first put in place back in the 70s, the Department of Revenue actually wasn't able to collect it. And so the City of Eugene has been doing that for a number of years. We've been collecting it on behalf of a number of our regional partners as well. In 2017, the legislature made a shift in which allows DOR to do that collection, which is actually a lot more efficient for all of us. They have the ability to do it and have the ability to deal with the penalties in ways that we just don't. And so we've looked at it, and it's doable through an agreement with DOR. And I think what we've found is it'll save us approximately $85,000. So our budget actually already shows a reduction in FTE for this. So this public hearing is just to hear what people think about that. And we'll be following up, I think, with an action in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Staff, can you please share the list of speakers and announce the first speaker?
We do not have any speakers signed up for this topic.
Oh, all right. Then I will close the public hearing and ask if there's anyone who'd like to make a comment, ask questions. All right. And we are scheduled to take action on these 2 items at a later date. Is it July 25th?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Now we are moving into our work sessions. So our first work session is a discussion regarding Eric Cook's our Russia sister city. And City Manager, could you please introduce this topic?
Yep. So this arose in, I don't know, about a month ago, came up again. So this will be the second time we've had a conversation about our sister city in Russia. And so I'm joined by Jason Dedrick, who's going to give a very brief presentation and then open it up for your conversation.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Jason Better. I am a policy analyst in the city manager's office, and you've had an opportunity to discuss this topic a few times at some meetings previous to this. And so I'm just going to provide you and community members that may be watching tonight just a really brief overview of our sister city program and the situation with Russia and with our sister city, and then step aside and have you have your conversation and answer any questions you might have. So just a quick recap of our sister city program. The purpose at a really high level is to promote cultural and educational exchange, to promote greater understanding and appreciation between cultures. And so there are other things that come from this sister city relationship that we have with our various cities, including often like a technical exchange or informational exchange, sometimes exchange on economic things of benefit. So there are other benefits as well, but really that cultural and educational exchange is kind of the primary goal of the program. We have 4 sister cities, 4 formal sister cities. They are listed here: Jinju, Kathmandu, Kakagawa, and Irkutsk, with the various dates for when those cities came on formally as sister cities. And then most recently in 2015, adding Ogaki as a friendly city. That's a much less formal relationship, but it is another way that we have of promoting relations with other cities and other cultures. So each city, each of those 4 cities is represented by a local nonprofit association. They are the ones who are carrying out the actions to keep that cultural exchange going between Eugene and those various sister cities. The city allocates $10,000 annually to each of those 4 cities to support their expenditures. Some of the typical expenditures, and when I say typical, I mean pre-COVID, because for the last few years, all of our sister cities have had relatively few expenditures, but what they're typically allocating those funds for are things like delegation visits, either coming into Eugene or going to those other countries. Youth exchange is also a common thing, so maybe stipends for homestays or expenses when youth are visiting our community. Interpretation services, also cultural and outreach events in our community to promote various cultures, and then program support, things like website and nonprofit maintenance, accounting, things like that. So those are some of the typical expenditures that occur through our 4 cities in an average year. And then a little bit of additional context regarding Irkutsk. As I mentioned, you've had at 3 previous meetings, you've had some discussion about the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the possible impacts on our sister city relationship with Irkutsk. So it's been a topic of discussion, and tonight is really just to carve out some formal time for you to have that discussion. More recently, in early June, Ukrainian President Zelensky asked the US cities to terminate their sister city relationships with Russia, any sister cities in Russia. This was at the US Conference of Mayors that Mayor Vinis attended. So that was a specific request. President actually called out several individual cities to examine or terminate their relationships with Russia. Eugene was not one of those, but that'll come back here in a minute. There are around 100 cities in the US that have a sister city relationship with a city in Russia. So some of those 100 cities have terminated or suspended those relationships. There is no real formal accounting of those relationships, so there's no one who keeps a formal list and the status of those. But through our research, it seems that at least 20 of those 100 have been terminated or suspended in the last few months. And then some cities, particularly the ones that have been called out by President Zelensky, those city councils said, well, since we've been called out specifically to terminate, we should have a discussion. Several of those did decide to terminate or suspend, but cities have also had conversations in a council setting and deliberately decided to maintain those relationships. So we're seeing cities go one of those 2 ways around the country. So there's precedent for both of those approaches. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you so that you can have your discussion here to provide any answers to any questions or any other staff support I can provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments, discussion? Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Council President. When we discussed this last time, I personally was opposed to breaking the relationship because I've always considered the sister city program people to people and not government to government. Subsequent to my decision on that, or my position on that, I've listened to quite a few people who know much more about this than I do. From the outside looking at this, it appears that people are existing under a pretty oppressive environment in that country. But listening to a former colleague here at the city whose country of origin is Russia, and listening to what he had to say about it, my position is changed. Plus other people I've listened to as well that know more about it than I do. And I, at this point, would be in support of either a suspension or an outright revocation. So I just wanted to state that since I was on the other side of this issue last time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Clark.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Randy's comments are interesting, and I'm kind of still absorbing that. I'm concerned most of all with the time, energy, money, and investment of the people of Eugene who are involved with the organization that supports the sister city program with Irkutsk. And I was wondering if Jason, maybe you could mention, could you talk more about the organization? You touched that real briefly as you went by there, but help me understand the structure of it a little bit better.
Sure. So each sister city, and in this specific case, the Irkutsk committee is comprised of a board of officers who, like an average nonprofit that you might be used to, maintain that organization. They plan events. They have correspondence with their sister city in Irkutsk. They receive the funds from Eugene. They create plans for the activities they want to do in the upcoming year. They prepare an annual report at the end of each year. They formally enter into a contract with the city to receive the funds and do that reporting and account for those funds. So how Irkutsk operates as a nonprofit is similar to how our other three sister cities operate, with sort of a handful of key officers who are then also working with other community members to plan events and do other things.
Have we heard from them or any of the officers on, their feelings about the nature of the relationship under the circumstances?
I have had some discussions with Galina Groza, who is the president of the Irkutsk Association. For example, one of the challenges with preparing her annual report was what would the activities be of the upcoming year. And when you're working with a city where they're currently the things that are going on in Russia, it makes it challenging to think about, well, what activities would we undertake in the upcoming year? So I think that the association is challenged by the current circumstances, and it makes it hard to think about those kind of things that typically happen, like delegation visits and other kind of cultural celebrations. So I think they find themselves in not a dissimilar position to you in terms of not quite sure what this all means.
Would you?
Sorry, Councilor Clark. I think the mayor might have some information relevant to your question, so I'm going to call on her.
If I still have my 2 minutes, that's awesome.
You bet.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I think Jason answered that very fully. I have had conversations with the chap with Galina Groza, and I know she's sitting in the audience there, a couple of times since the invasion began. And so I think Jason was reported really what my conversations with her, also recognizing that this is just a very challenging time. I think, effectively this is an exchange program, and effectively there's no exchange. So I would suggest that the reality is that this program is suspended anyway. It's really on hold anyway, and this is really just to acknowledge that. We would hope that there would be truce and peace, and that we would be able to reconstitute a local chapter. But that's hard to foresee at this point. And I think that was the message that I got from Galina as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Mayor. I think I'm channeling Betty Taylor here a little bit, but I think those organizations and those relationships are important to maintain. I will look forward to a conversation with my friend Councilor Groves and learn more about his conversations that would alter the way he thinks about it. If it's functionally suspended. I could understand suspending it. I don't know about revoking it yet, but I'm open to learning more. So thank you.
I have Counselor Zelinka, followed by Counselor Ye.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Yeah, I have no love lost for the Russians, especially the government, not necessarily the people. As I mentioned before, they took away my uncle and my grandfather and never were seen again, so they effectively murdered them. But when we talked about this before, I was interested in having the mayor reach out to the mayor of Irkutsk, and we got no response. We don't even know if the letter got to the mayor. So, and so I did a little research into what the Sister City program was all about, because I had done it a while ago. So I refreshed my memory, and and it wasn't, the purpose wasn't a government to government program. To the contrary, it was a people to people program. And from the Sister City website, when President Eisenhower proposed the program, it was to create dialogue among people, not governments, and to avoid future conflicts. And quote from the website says, Sister Cities International was created by President Eisenhower in 1956 White House Conference on Citizen Diplomacy. Eisenhower envisioned an organization that could be hub of peace and prosperity by creating bonds between people with different cities around the world. By forming these relationships, President Eisenhower reasoned that people of different cultures could celebrate and appreciate their differences and build partnerships that would lessen the chance of new conflicts. And President Eisenhower first established the people-to-people program. He said in his legendary speech, if we're going to take advantage of these assumptions that all people want peace, then the problem is for people to get together and lead governments, if necessary, to evade governments, to work out not one method, but thousands of methods in which people can gradually learn a little bit more about each other. So when we first brought this up, I thought that was back in February. I thought this was a very fitting goal and purpose, but now it doesn't seem like that is happening. It's not likely to happen. That, along with the war crimes that Russia has been committing and President Zelensky's request, I lean towards suspending this program, and I think that's respectful of the Irkutsk Eugene Committee, but leaves the door open for some hopeful dialogue to fulfill President Eisenhower's rationale for it, which I think is a good, solid one.
Counselor Ye.
Thank you. So Alan kind of made the point I was going to make. The first time we talked about this, I admitted I'm not sure what the right thing to do is. It was early and it's complicated, and I understand that, making a rash decision probably wasn't the right thing to do. But as he mentioned, the point of the program is people to people. And if that's what this is supposed to be doing, then our whole entire program needs to be re-looked at, because I know from my own experience visiting Jinju that it is very much a government-run program in Korea. It is not a people to people. I met government officials. I talked to government people almost the entire time. So if we want this to be a people to people situation, then we're going to need to relook at our program and pick communities that are willing to meet us at that level and do a people to people situation. I think the entire Sister City program, if I'm also going to channel Counselor Taylor, deserves a relook to see if we're funding it appropriately, if we need to make changes. But for this particular Sister City program, I think a suspension at this point with a reevaluation in the future is completely appropriate and would support it.
I put myself in the queue. I originally spoke against suspending this relationship when it first came before council, and I too have reconsidered my position. I appreciate Counselor Zelinka and Counselor Ye's perspective. I think it matches my own. I feel like there's no option to engage in this relationship right now, given the circumstances, and that a suspension would be appropriate. And I also appreciate Counselor Ye's advocating for us to take a relook at the Sister City program. I think it's been a long time since it's been evaluated, and it's certainly, its funding was cut way back during the recession. So I think that would be worthy of follow-up. I have Councillor Keating, followed by Councillor Evans.
This Councillor Evans want to go because I was prepared to make a motion, but
I'll come back
following
to
my
you then.
comments, if that works.
Yep, sure. I'll call on you last. Councillor Evans and then Councillor Semple.
Thanks, Counselor. I'm in favor of suspending the relationship. I don't think that we should at this point terminate the relationship because we know that politics is fluid all over the world. And one of these days, Vladimir Putin may no longer be the president of Russia, and things could or may change. I don't think that that's maybe possible in the next 10 or 15 years, but you never know what happens. Things change with Gorbachev and a lot of other situations in that regard. I would be in favor of us taking a relook at the program overall, and then also looking at the money that we have already set aside for this program going to a city in the Ukraine. And, assisting some people who are under major duress and oppression because of Russian aggression. To me, I think that would send a clear statement about what this city, the city of Eugene, values in terms of human rights and, how we interact as human beings with people around the world. So that's a suggestion. I don't have it in terms of a motion, but I think that I would like for, staff to maybe do a little bit more research and maybe come back to us with a comparable city in the Ukraine that we could support.
Councillor Semple.
Thank you. Pretty much wouldn't really have to say anything. Everybody said it, but I'm gonna anyway. I was originally against leaving, abandoning in any way, and I was so happy the mayor wrote. But I also listened to our employees and people who are associated with it, and the horrors that they communicated. And also, as Councillor Ye pointed out, the governments are using this to their advantages. Look, Eugene supports us, the government, not you, the people. So the original purposes of it being people to people isn't happening. So I think we should suspend it because of the disasters and horrifying events, but it's not happening. So we're not really taking anything away from people that we want to have our friends, be our friends. And yet I don't think it's time to totally abandon them and cut them off of our potential list. And yes, let's channel Councillor Taylor. This is a really important program that hasn't got a lot of attention for many years. And the last couple of years would make it even harder. But as we come out of pandemic and are allowed and healthy to visit each other, I think this is something we should put more effort into, because after all, I'm for world peace, starting with Eugene. So let's go do it. Thanks.
Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Council President. It warms my heart to hear so many people channel their inner Betty Taylor. That's great. I want to say thank you to colleagues for the conversation that we had several months ago, in which I believe it was Councillor Zelenka floated an idea to invest $10,000 in humanitarian and refugee assistance to Ukrainians. I just want to highlight that piece right there. And I concur with Councillor Evans and Councillor Ye. I think the two of you articulated very well the need for a possible partnership with a community in Ukraine. And I'll take that a step further, and I think you've articulated this at the dais before, Councillor Evans. There's also a fundamental need to have a sister city relationship, a footprint on every corner of this globe. And we're pretty focused on Asia. Let's explore sister city relationships in Africa, in South America, and beyond. I'm curious on what a timeline, I don't know if the manager's prepared or Jason, if you're prepared for a potential timeline in the examination of our sister city program and in possibly expanding it.
I think our plan was to come back in the fall, but we haven't spoken about it specifically since he's been back from vacation, but that was the plan.
Okay, great. The other point I want to make, I was at the World Athletics Championships at Hayward Field on Friday and Sunday. And it's really something special when you see the Ukrainian athletes so embraced by the community. You can't walk past the athletes from Ukraine without feeling so powerfully for their community. You can see the pride in their eyes, and you can feel that the energy is palpable when folks come up and want to get selfies with the Ukrainian athletes. You know who you don't see at the World Athletic Championships? You don't see Russian athletes for a reason. The WAC is sending a message. I think it's important we send that message to front and center on our website. When you look up the Sister City program on the City of Eugene site, it indicates we promote peace through people-to-people relationships. The best way to promote that peace is to suspend the program and revisit it when there is peace and look at a more global, holistic Sister City program approach. I'm going to move.
Actually, I see that Councilor Zelenka has his hand up, so I'd like to give him a second round before you put the motion on the table.
Great, thank you.
All right, Councilor Zelenka.
Thank you, Claire. Before we vote, I just wanted to see if the city manager could tell us what happened with our $10,000 and where it went and how if it's gotten there.
For FY23 or for 22?
I meant the $10,000 to Ukraine.
Oh, do you want to?
Sure, I can speak to that. Yeah, the entity that funds were directed to was called Direct Relief. And we do have confirmation that those funds were received. They didn't, and I don't think they typically do provide a detailed accounting of where they went, but part of their mission is to get relief supplies directly to the ground as fast as possible. And so they were one of the first groups on the ground in Ukraine and warehousing materials and setting up distribution channels that were very much people to people, using things like Facebook and Twitter to use kind of live tracking of where supplies were needed, live kind of intel on where supplies were needed to try to get things to the ground as fast as possible. So that was the entity that the council's $10,000 went to.
Great. We were all briefed on that. All the councils were briefed on that soon, but I wanted to get that on the record so that people understood that we did actually make that donation and it got to people in Ukraine to help them in their desperate times. Thanks.
Council President, can I just make a comment? As I re-looked at this motion, the way it's worded right now directs me to withhold FY23 funds, but it doesn't say beyond that. So it assumes we're either coming back with that, or I think you could adjust the motion to just have a period after Irkutsk. And I'll just know that that means I'm not initiating a contract with them because we've suspended the relationship. And then we don't need to talk about this. We're still at war when we come around to FY24. Just a thought.
I will leave that up to the Council Vice President to decide. And Councilor Evans wanted a second round.
Yeah, just briefly, I just want to echo what Councilor Keating just mentioned in a conversation of establishing other sister city relationships. I was approached about 2 years ago from some people in Cologne, Panama, about a sister city relationship with them. Yeah, and at that time I said, well, you know, budget-wise, I think we're a little on the tight side, but you know, when the opportunity comes up, I'm more than happy to float that idea. And for those of you who don't know the geography of Panama, Cologne is the main entry point from the Pacific to go into the locks that, you know, bring you across to the Atlantic Ocean and all of that. And so it's strategically located in terms of the canal zone. So, you know, just a thought, and hopefully we can have a broader discussion about this sometime later on down the line.
All right, Council Vice President.
Renew your passports now. Thank you, Council President. I hear what you're saying, city manager. So to be clear, if the motion simply said move to suspend the sister city relationship with Erkooks, that would satisfy the desire that's being expressed by council?
Yeah.
Move to suspend the sister city relationship with Erkooks?
Second.
All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. That is unanimous. Motion passes. Thank you for the discussion. Now we are moving on to a work session about the Fifth Street Market Expansion Project update. And City Manager, I'll let you kick that off.
Take a minute and let Will Dowdy get set up and we'll lead our discussion about this project.
Hello, good evening, City Council and Mayor. My name is Will Dowdy. I'm the Community Development Director. And I think we're all set up. 4 years ago, we were sitting in a different building at the time. I was sharing an update on a big expansion proposed by Obi Companies for the Fifth Street Market. A couple years later, at the Gordon Lofts moved in and the businesses and hotel on the Market Alley opened their doors. Today, I want to give you an update on new plans for the Market District and call attention to 2 ways that council will be asked to play a role. As you know, the Fifth Street Market District is a mixed-use district on the east end of Fifth Avenue between Willamette Street and the train station, and to the east, the downtown riverfront. If you've walked through here, you're well aware of 2 surface parking lots on the south side of Fifth up against the recent development, and on the north side of the street next to the Oregon Electric Station. These 2 locations were called the County Elections Block and Train Depot area in the 2004 downtown plan, and called out in that plan as 2 downtown development opportunity areas. What you can see in front of you is a map from that plan, and we're talking about areas 1, which is the County Elections Block, and 2, which is the Train Depot area. Obi Companies is proposing to build approximately 325 new housing units with street level commercial on these sites that would fill a key gap in the walking experience of Fifth Avenue. The buildings are proposed as 7-story buildings, including structured parking for both residents and others. The first of these buildings is next to the Oregon Electric Station, with a following phase called the Mildred standing next to the Gordon Lofts and Hotel. So you can see the first phase in yellow and the second phase in orange. Preliminary sketch of the first one on the north side of Fifth. This is an illustrative view taken from the southeast, looking northwest. Behind this would be the train station. Now I'll move on to a floor plan. The floor plan on the ground floor shows the proposed retail that's in the darker orange and the way it comes up against the street. And there's a larger parking area that's in the gray, muted gray tone in the back. That's up against the railroad tracks. And so that's how it fills out that site. If I switch to a building section slicing through the architecture, you can see here how that retail provides that street edge on the lower left side. You can see the parking in the back, again, up against the railroad tracks. And you can see the residential units up above. This is one of a couple of different planned studies that they're going through right now. The location of the upper part is, they're trying to figure out if it's more like an H or a C or an L. Architecture often follows letters when you get into apartments. But what I want to make clear through all of this is that the retail is always up against the street and the parking is always in the back, and then you have the residential upstairs. I mentioned that these sites have been identified as locations for redevelopment in the downtown plan. In addition to that plan, this expansion also relates to actions in the Climate Action Plan and the Housing Implementation Pipeline. The CAP 2.0 states that emissions from transportation fuels make up 53% of Eugene's local emissions. And then the plan goes on to have a handful of transportation strategies connected with compact development, with particular emphasis on the role of building more housing downtown. The HIP also emphasizes downtown housing, and the overall housing supply category has 5-year goals that include issuing permits for the construction of 6,000 housing units citywide and increasing the amount of housing units downtown by 50%. The proposed market district expansion projects would account for 5% and 25% respectively towards those 2 goals. OB Companies has told us that the project as envisioned would depend on 3 public actions: a zone change, a Muppy, and a modified height limit, which is the one I will spend the most time on tonight. First, the zone change. Currently, the train depot area and part of the county elections block are zoned I2, light medium industrial, connecting to their proximity to the railroad tracks. OB Companies has submitted an application for a zone change to C2, which is the commercial zone that is consistent with most of the surrounding area. Such an action was anticipated by the 2004 downtown plan, which states that this train depot area will be redesignated and rezoned to allow commercial development compatible with the adjacent downtown area. This would be a type 3 decision, which would be determined by a hearings official. OB Companies has also told us that they expect to apply for a multi-unit property tax exemption, or MUPTI, for each of these projects. There's no action needed by council at this time. We haven't even received an application yet, but we expect that they will submit an application this fall, which means that we would expect it to be at the council table in early 2023. The final item on the list is a revision to the height limit. These 2 sites fall within the Skinner Butte height limitation area, which I show on this map. As you may recall, this height limitation area applies to properties between the Willamette River on the north, 6th Avenue on the south, Washington on the west, and Coburg Road on the east. For most of the area, it restricts buildings, including their accessory roof structures and architectural features, to a specified height, either 500 feet above sea level or 40 feet, whichever is taller. For those properties within a half block of 6th Avenue, the height limit extends up to 530 feet, a revision that you made in 2018 that allowed the Gordon Lofts and Hotel to be built. The 2 properties we're discussing today have an existing ground elevation of approximately 430 feet above sea level, creating an effective height limit of approximately 70 feet. The current design for the market district expansion is dependent on an amendment to the land use code to allow 7-story buildings in these locations, which they're projecting at 95 feet. OB Companies has indicated that the envisioned height of these buildings allows for increased density, that would be additional housing units, beyond what would otherwise be allowed by the code. And this additional density is what makes the project economically feasible. I'll zoom in a little bit here. Here you can see on the left, the Graduate Hotel. You can see the next gray box in the middle is the Gordon Lofts, and dashed in on the right side, you can see the proposed development. And you can see a few of these lines that are running across. The blue line is the 500-foot limit that would be allowed under the current code. And the pink line on the left is the height limit within the C2 zone standard when it's not subject to any special height limits. And the red line is the 150-foot mark that marks the height limit in the C3 zone, which is what the core of downtown is when it's not subject to any other height limits. According to the code, height limitation areas exist to protect views to and from landmarks, in this case, Skinner Butte. I asked OB Companies about this and they created some massing models. This view looking up Oak Street from 7th Avenue. Here's the view taken from Google Street View. This is what it would be allowed. This would be the height of a building superimposed into that if it was allowed at 70 feet, which is what's currently allowed by code. And this is what would be anticipated for a 95-foot tall building. If you move up to 6th Avenue, doing the same thing again, here you can see in the background that if the building was 70 feet as allowed by code, it would appear to be this tall. And if it was 95 feet as the 7th-story building would be, it would be this tall. And then on Friday, I was riding through this area. It was a beautiful day. I was on my way back from the Riverfront Fan Festival. And I stopped here because I was thinking about this work session and thinking about this topic. And if you're familiar with this site, then you know that to the east of it is the Station Square building where Steelhead Brewery is and a number of shops. So that's a two-story building. And so I looked at this site and I looked at that building and tried to trace a line over as I took this picture. So this, if they built a building on this site that was a two-story building of the same height, it would come in at this height. And this is basically what happens when you approach distance objects and see other objects in the distance and the way that they look from a different perspective. A modification of a height limit is a code change, which must be initiated by council. There's an opportunity for you to consider this as an action next week. If you were to initiate a code change, it does not determine a final outcome. Rather, it initiates a process that includes notice to the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development and interested parties. Then next would be a public hearing before the Planning Commission, who in turn provides a recommendation to City Council. Then there's a public hearing before City Council. Finally, with all of that information gathered, there would be an action by City Council. So again, no action proposed for you today, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Semple.
Thank you. This is pretty exciting stuff. I have a constituent who's very worried about the baggage building where Mecca is moving from. A historic building, is that protected or is that possibly going to be removed?
There's two important historical buildings. There's that building and then the Oregon Electric Station. And OB Companies has said that they're aware of the value that they have to the community and have no intention to disturb either of those.
Wonderful. Boy, the dotted lines, the black lines, that's sometimes kind of scary. It's like, well, what difference does it make if it's 100 feet or 150 feet? Can't see the butte anyway. So that was pretty interesting, especially that the two-story building that close blocks everything out. So can't even see probably the second-story building. Thank you very much.
Councilor Groves, followed by Councilor Keating.
Thank you, Council President. 325 new units of housing. That's huge. I mean, we're trying to densify. We are trying to provide more housing when we have a dearth of housing in this community now. We're trying to bring people downtown. One of the ways that we help address behavioral problems is populating our streets with people. And it really does have an effect. I'm excited about the potential here. I do appreciate you showing the photos and illustrating what it would look like with a two-story versus a taller building. I'm excited to learn more about this, although I think I've got a pretty good idea of what's being asked here, and am very interested in seeing how we proceed. But one question I do have, speaking of the 150-foot limit in the C zone in the core of downtown, what does that take, or is there any discussion about lifting that? Because I have heard in the past different developers talk about if they could go higher, some of these projects pencil out better than having to stop at 150 feet. And it is our downtown. It just seems like if we're going to really be adding some density, that's one way of doing it without adding, taking up more square footage. I'm not speaking about the OB project right now. I'm talking specifically about our downtown core.
That would be, so that 150-foot height limit, as well as the 120 in the C2 zone, those are both in the code. The C3 zone, where the 150-foot is only in downtown, C2 exists in other parts of the city. And so changes to that would be a code change, and the city attorney can tell me if there's any reason why that can't be done in a similar process.
No, I'm not aware of anything that would prevent you. there's been, those decisions were policy decisions made back in the time, so you can look at it and make different policy decisions.
Do you know how far back that was?
No, but we can certainly, that is something we could absolutely get you. Just
That,
kind
that
of
would
get
be
the
interesting to
legislative
know.
history.
I'm guessing my colleagues might be interested in that information too. Because, different time, different place, things make sense. But times change, and especially at a time when we're trying not to expand the UGB any more than we have to. This is one way of providing housing without having to do that. So I am interested in that, but I'm also very excited about this project, which also continues to help connect our downtown to the riverfront, and then the riverfront back to the University of Oregon, back to downtown. So thank you very much. I enjoyed the presentation.
Councilor Keating.
Thank you. I'm just going to editorialize aesthetically for a moment before I underscore my enthusiasm for building up and not out. You drive by the where the Gordon Lofts Hotel are, that the new Nike building goes right up to the street, really boxes things in. And the artist rendering in front of us on page, I guess this is 2, the L. In a game of Tetris, I would want the L to be flipped. There's a lot of land that just goes open to the railroad. Wondering where Buffalo Exchange, one of my favorite places to shop, would end up in that game of Tetris. But just I assuming that the representatives from the OB group are tuning in, and just I know I'm one of 8. Just aesthetically, going right up to that sidewalk is really unattractive, and it's just one person's opinion. Actually, it's not one person's opinion. I've heard that opinion expressed multiple times. I suspect that I'm not alone on council sharing such opinion. I appreciate the longing to preserve the historic buildings like the Oregon Electric Station. I'm wondering what kind of, when this kind of density is increased and we have 325 new units, at what price point are these units? Are we talking a truly mixed economy where a Eugenian at a median, what a $300 or $36,000 a year can buy into, or are these, is this potential handout or tax break for luxury, unaffordable housing?
I haven't been given any information about the price points of the units, other than that that they're intending market rate housing.
They are intending market rate housing.
They are intending it to be market rate and not income qualified.
So market rate is even arguably wholly unaffordable at this point in history. So not income qualified, hence the MUPD, a zone change / code change, a MUPD, and a modified height limit. I think that it's prudent for this council to revisit MUPD. Are we getting really the bang for the buck if there's a MUPD and a contractor or a builder doesn't have to have truly a scaled or mixed economy, truly have affordable housing. Instead, those dollars go into an affordable housing pool of money. Are we really truly getting our bang for the buck? When was the last time this council adjusted MUPD?
That was in 2015, I believe.
Okay, looks like my time is up. I may take a second round, but I think it's high time, Council President, that we revisit our MUPD parameters. Thank you.
I put myself in the queue, and then it's Councilor Clark. So I do share some of Councilor Grove's enthusiasm for the potential for such an increase of housing downtown, pending taking in more information about potential impacts. I do have a question. If we were to initiate that process on a code change, how soon do you anticipate it might be coming back to council for final action, going through that public hearing with the planning commission and all that?
I believe we can do those sorts of things in about 3 to 4 months. It depends on the timing of a few different things through there, and there's some prescribed timelines throughout that. So use that as a kind of a middle of the road estimate, and we would try to move through it as quickly as possible, but sometimes these things take longer.
Okay. So these are very preliminary comments on my part, but from what you shared with us visually, it looked like to some extent that a building built on meeting the current height limits would have an impact on the view shed, and building above it obviously has a slightly greater, but the difference was not huge, I guess, and the trees do keep growing. Would commercial setbacks apply to this development? Speaking to Councilor Keating's concern about being right up against the sidewalk.
I don't know that specifically, and we can get back to you. I would check in with planning to confirm the answer.
Okay. Yeah, and our Muppy program does require either that there be some percentage, I think it's 30% of units meet an income threshold, or the developer contribute a proportion of dollars to our affordable housing trust fund, which we do make good use of. So it might not be building that housing in downtown, though we are building workforce housing right now using different income stream, but it potentially could be used to build publicly supported housing in our downtown core, so that we create that mix in the neighborhood, if not in the actual buildings themselves. So those are my initial thoughts. I'm sure I'll have more to say as this comes back to us. Thank you. Councilor Clark and then Councilor Zelenka.
Thank you, Madam President. I would say to my friend Councilor Keating that although it seems like a long time ago, it feels like just the other day to me, when Muppy was all but dead as an incentive for getting housing in our downtown. When George Brown and I sat down and worked through the idea of workforce housing and adding that new element to the mix, along with a couple of other smaller items that got tagged on at the end, we kept that tool in place. And as I understand it, that's a pretty significant part of the HIP and everything that we've talked about with regard to the importance of getting housing downtown. And so I hope we're not seriously considering altering radically or getting rid of that tool and that incentive, so that we can actually see our plans already made come to fruition. But the community has argued for decades now, and we've gone through many processes. Envision Eugene was all about the question, is Eugene going to grow out or is it going to grow up? And we answered that question, as near as I understand it, that we're going to focus on what's needed so that we get more housing downtown and we grow up. I'm excited about the opportunities for this project. I think it fulfills a number of long-standing plans this council has made over the years. And I think it's time we recognize that growing up in our downtown, as we've long planned to do now, requires us to ease up on our height limitations in order to get it done and afford to do it. So I'm looking forward to furthering the discussion. Thanks.
Councilor Zelenka.
Thanks, Claire. I'll confirm that Muppy changes were just yesterday. Sure seems like that. We did work on that quite a bit. And I'll come back to that in a second. But the answer to the question about setbacks is the intent that the new setbacks do apply citywide. So I would be surprised if they didn't, since they haven't put any permits in. I do worry about waivers to that setback requirement. And I think they should be far and few between. In our city, we're not Manhattan. So that was the whole intent there. And I'm pretty darn sure that those would apply here because they're citywide ramifications where we flip the way that we're doing business, that you can get a waiver, but it's the default is a setback. What's the height limitation on residential zone right now?
In an R1 zone?
Well, I don't know if we have R1 zone anymore because of HB 2001.
I don't know what that number is. Catherine, you may have it at the top of mind. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, could you get back to us on that?
Yes,
I
can.
C2, 120 feet. So C2 is all around this. It's all over the city. There's bunches of it around. Most of Willamette is C2, and we can see 120-foot buildings on Willamette. We are a complete outlier that allows 120-foot citywide in C2 all over the place. And I've been trying to get us to look at that for years. That is in some instances crazy. I agree with downtown makes sense, but 120 feet we're an anomaly in the state of Oregon for that, by the way. I hope that they preserve the OES and the train station building. Those are very cool buildings. I worked at the Oregon Electric Station when I first moved here. I also think that 325 housing units, new housing units would be great. I don't really like Muppy, and one of the things that I did strongly work towards is getting that option to have that affordable housing trust fund of 10% of the Muppy going to affordable housing. That's how we got the 500K or so for the Montgomery project that made that feasible. George and Mike were on the other side of wanting more workforce housing. I think one out of all of them have gone that way. Most of them have done the affordable housing trust fund. Whether or not it's worthy of a discussion of whether or not 10% is the right number. But that's where we landed a couple of years back. It's probably in that same ballpark, I would think. But and that for me provided the adequate public benefit that we needed to get out of these projects. But I still don't necessarily like Muppy as a tool, but I wanted it to create more some public benefit because I knew I was in the minority of moving projects like that forward. Thanks.
Councilor Groves or second round?
Thank you, Council President. Will, how long ago was the Muppy program suspended, and for how long?
That's actually before my time here with the city. So,
then you probably
I guess I don't know.
You probably don't know how many units of housing, multi-unit housing was developed in downtown while the Muppy was suspended. Then
I do know the answer to that, and there have been no housing units built recently in downtown without the Muppy program.
So do you consider the Muppy program an important component in creating compact urban housing in our downtown?
Yes, I do. It's pretty clearly spelled out in a lot of our plans and action items.
Thank you. Do you agree that any housing at any level helps our housing shortage? And is there a trickle-down effect that takes place?
That feels a little bit like a trick question. Yes, any housing that is built does help our housing shortage. That feels a little bit like it's kind of by definition. And I don't have any good statistics on it, but I do know that we have seen investments of housing of one type influence housings of another. So you can call that a trickle down. But yes, building. There's need across the entire spectrum. And so what happens is that people of one category, whether it's an income-based or price-based, or whether you're looking at household size, or you're looking at other demographic things like students versus non-students, when you, the shortage is acute pretty much consistently across the spectrum. And so you will have people reaching from one pool into a housing type that impacts other people.
Got it. Thank you. And I wasn't trying to trick you. Excuse my clumsiness in my questioning. And then my last question, I believe I heard this somewhere, but I wanted to confirm with you. Is there a provision in the proposal that does provide a contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund?
Yeah, so as was pointed out, if they are so through a MUPTI application, presumably, as they've said, they'll apply for a MUPTI, then they would either be proposing to build some moderate income housing units within the project, or if not, then that would be a fee in lieu of, which would then be able to be used, as was mentioned. We've done this before. That would go into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and then we'd be able to leverage that money to bring private investment in to build more moderate income housing units.
Great. And can you define what moderate priced housing is?
For this case, moderate income housing would be for people who make up to 80% of the area median income.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I just wanted to point a couple of things out about the MUPTI program. Everybody knows the big, huge 11-story building on the north side of Franklin Boulevard. That was with the MUPTI. 1 block away on Franklin Boulevard is another building going up, nearly identical. That was without a MUPTI, and it was built without a MUPTI. And previously, before we constrained the footprint of the MUPTI zone, we had people building university housing across the street with a MUPTI and across the street without a MUPTI, almost identical buildings. So my conclusion from that is, in most places, if a MUPTI is available, people will apply for it, and they will probably get it, regardless if it's needed or not. In the 2 instances I said, I doubt they were needed, and so that's one of the reasons I was opposed to a lot of the MUPTIs that are going on. So it's not it's inaccurate to say that we don't get we don't get multifamily housing projects without MUPTI. We do, and that's been proven around all over the city, especially on Franklin Boulevard.
Councilor Clark, followed by Councilor Ye.
I'll just pick right up where Alan dropped there and say that, surprisingly, that you can agree with what my colleague said, if you will, but you have to agree that the but-for criteria don't mean anything. That's why, as a part of this last MUPTI, we adjusted that as well and put other people in between the application and coming to council to determine the economic feasibility of the project and say, is it accurate that but for the MUPTI, this project will not be built? Because we were having that argument over and over and over again, just like it was asserted a few moments ago by my colleague. But we put folks in the middle of application to us to do the analysis, people we can trust, people that are third party and don't have a vested interest, to give us that information so that we can know with certainty that answer. And that was a part of the MUPTI revision too, so we could stop arguing about it. I'm glad we did. Another of our colleagues, Councilor Evans, brought up something in a conversation with me the other day that has me thinking about this. I think any housing we can build at all right now is a very good idea, and we should be helping people to do that if we can, and if that's absolutely necessary. The point that Councilor Evans, and maybe he can articulate this concern better than I can, but I agree with him that if the university succeeds in some manner of conference change, there are other conferences with student populations in the 50,000 range, not the 23,000 range. And I suspect that if our conference for the University of Oregon changes, that's going to have a significant effect on housing in our community. That's probably an understatement. But a part of the development process for student housing in and around, most of which got MUPTI, brought a lot of that initial population of the university growth from the 16, 17,000 range years ago to the 23,000 range of students. they had begun to move much farther out into the neighborhoods to rent housing for the university, where their move back to the core, when a lot of that university housing was built, university area multifamily housing was built, left a lot of those other rental homes for other people in our community. And I think we should be very mindful of that as the university moves forward. How much of the rest of the city's footprint are students needing? So thank you.
So I'm going to call on Counselor Ye and then put myself in the queue. And then I'm keeping an eye on the time here. I am going to wrap us up in a few minutes unless there's folks who never had a first round who wish to speak. So Counselor Ye.
Yeah, thanks. I'll make this quick because Mike already made my point about remembering that we have an independent financial analysis done of our MUPT. And sorry to Will, who had to listen to us rehash all of that. That's probably not why you're here. I want to echo that I think some really good questions got shared with you today. And I assume you are just here today to make sure you get all of our questions and a general, like, this seems like it's good to go forward. Is that kind of what you're looking for today? Well, excellent. I think we're at a good place for this. And I look forward to getting those answers back. So thank you, Will.
So I put myself in the queue and then Counselor Keating. I'm going to push back a little bit on Counselor Zelenka. The question that Counselor Groves asked staff was, were there any buildings built in the core of downtown without a MUPT? And the answer is no. No buildings were built in the core of downtown without a MUPT. The stretch along Franklin is not in the core of downtown. And then I feel like the reference to the student housing being built without MUPTs, during the recession, the only thing that was getting financed was student housing. Single family homes weren't getting financed, multifamily housing was barely getting financed. And so that is part of the reason those units were being built without needing a MUPT. And then right when I came on council, we approved the last of the student housing MUPTs because then we changed the program and excluded housing that was going to be marketed or designed to accommodate students, which I think was a good decision. Counselor Key.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to comment on a few points that were made. Since student housing was brought up, I want to recognize that there's a plethora of student housing in this community. Not a dearth of student housing. There's a dearth of housing. There's a plethora of student housing. I would welcome a conversation, a work session, whatever you want to call it, on underscoring the need for far more flexibility with so-called student housing. Asking the question, why isn't it community housing? Seniors and students and residents of all ages living in a community or a shared community rather than simply so-called student housing. I apologize, colleagues, for opening a can of MUPT worms. To be clear,
Late now.
to be clear, I was and still am proposing an adjustment to MUPT that increases the investment in low income or affordable housing or our affordable housing fund, not striking entirely a tool that has clearly been beneficial in regards to building housing. I just want to be very clear about that point. Thank you. Thank you, Will, for the presentation. We got off on a few tangents here and there as we do.
Whenever the M word is mentioned, this is what happens. I'm just glad we didn't go down a football conference rabbit hole. So thank you very much. We were going to move on to our next topic. And that is picking up the tabled conversation regarding the city manager's compensation. We had two motions on the table on July 13th at the July 13th work session. And that was a main motion that was setting the city manager's compensation at $252,013, and then a motion to amend to set that salary at $260,000. So, Councillor Keating,
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to move, first of all, I'd like to ask Councilor Semple, the maker of the motion, if she would accept a friendly amendment to her amendment to insert the dollar figure $255,013.
That's not what we talked.
$255,000.
That's not what we talked about.
Excuse me, thank you. You're right. It's not what we talked about. My apologies. $256,000 inserting in place of what was your amendment of 260,000. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Keating. I'll speak to that. I think $260,000 is the correct amount. We need to catch up to the industry standard. Our other execs' salaries were adjusted, but city manager wasn't. So really, we've been underpaying her for some years. It's within the suggested range. And when we had her evaluation, it was quite outstanding. And I think we need to make our compensation decisions based on that evaluation, regardless of what you feel right now. Also, I feel that it's important to stay competitive. There's other cities that are paying $400,000+ a year. So that's what I think should happen. But I also am really interested in compromise and in council coming together. And the figure of 256 does give some attention to merit, and it mitigates slightly the huge increase that's coming as we reach the regular standards. So thank you, Councilor Keating, for this suggestion, even though against what I wanted, and I accept it.
So
thank you, and
that was
apologies.
a
The extra $13
very long yes.
Thank you.
So can I just get a real quick clarity? Is it 256,013? Was that your friendly, or was it your friendly 256?
Yeah, the extra 13 threw me off. If Councilor Semple accepts a 256.13, that's where I would like to. I mean,
I would really like it to be 256.
Fine.
I would like it to be more
Councilor Semple's
elegant.
motion.
Okay.
Councilor Semple gets what Councilor Semple wants.
So
Well, not really, but close.
hold on, stand by. So Councilor Keating, I
Yeah.
called on you first, and then Councilor Semple took a turn. Did you have more you wanted to say before I call on Councilor Evans?
No, but I believe this, even though she accepted the friendly,
yeah,
it's
I
secondary.
understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Checking in,
I'm
'cause
fine.
we
I'm
still
good.
have time on the clock.
That's it.
Okay. As the second of the motion, I accept the friendly amendment. Thank you. Councilor Evans.
So I've got a question on this, and forgive me if I'm a little bit off, but when I was going back through the recording of this discussion from the last meeting, I'm understanding that our city manager is not the highest paid employee. Am I correct on that?
Currently,
No, that's incorrect.
Oh,
So she is currently, I don't know, based on, but for just straight salary, she is the highest paid straight salary. The conversation that you were hearing was the kind of general industry standard, which is that a city manager's salary is set at least 10% above the highest paid exec. So her salary is currently at 232, a little bit above the highest paid exec currently, and to set her at 10% above the highest paid exec would put her at that 252 number. But she is currently by a few $1,000s the highest paid. But that was the conversation you were hearing.
So could we memorialize that 10% gap in another motion? Because my concern is this. I really think that we, as times change, as things move forward, that we're real clear that when we go out to hire another city manager somewhere down the line, hopefully not for the next 10 years or so, that, it is real clear that the city manager's salary is commensurate with being the CEO of the organization. And that means that he or she or he would get paid appropriately in that manner. So when it's the time to do that, I would like to make the motion that it would be 10% above the next highest executive organization.
So, and there's a couple of ways. I mean, you can always be provided that like you can have standing that you'll always be provided because you are in control of where you set the salary. So this is the first time I think you were provided the information of what that 10% above the highest paid exec was. But if you want to make a motion that just, once we've resolved all this, that just states the intent of this council is that our city manager will always be paid at least 10% above the highest paid exec, you certainly can do that. I will, obviously nothing stops another council from coming in and having a different motion. But if you want to state that intent.
Yeah, well, after we get through with this motion, that's the motion, the next motion I'd like to make.
Okay. I have Councilor Groves followed by Councilor Clark.
Thank you,
Oh,
Council.
you took his hand down. Okay.
Thank you, Council President. I agree with Councilor Evans that I think we need some methodology around this. For me, this has nothing to do personally with Sarah or anybody else. It's trying to make sure that we've got a fair and equitable way of compensating our employees, and but something that we can also explain to the public when they ask, as the stewards of the public's money. A question I do have, even though we as a council do not directly oversee executive managers, are the executive managers all at least 10% over their highest paid division manager?
I do not know the answer to that.
Christy, do you know that by chance? I know there has been in the past. I mean, that's why I'm asking it. And we don't have a real say in that, but it just seems to me that we're talking about a system here. And the system, we want to be able to attract and retain good quality executives and talent. And it just seems like I will be supporting Councilor Evans' motion on this, but it just seems like we should be having that play down to the executive managers as well. I mean, I don't know if I'm crossing a line by suggesting, I'm not directing anybody, I'm just expressing an opinion.
Yeah, and you're in open session, so it's the concern about the charter is different because you can have open discussions in public meetings, which is different than the charter provision. I think part of when we talk and Councilor Evans, when we get to your motion, you'll want to have some specificity when you're talking about ranges, right? So if you had a division manager at the top of their range, these ranges overlap, right? So if council does go on to set a range for the city manager position, if I'll just use the numbers that was in the data, if the range was set at 220 to 281, 220 is not 10% above the highest paid exec. So when you start to get in the ranges and the ranges at times overlap. So if you had the highest paid division manager at the very top of the range and then an exec that was brought in at the very lowest of the range, it's the ranges that set some of that.
Yeah, and to be clear, my intent was, or my interest was range to range, not necessarily somebody coming in brand new at a lower range, supervising a very senior person who's at the top range. I mean, I don't know that we can always maintain the 10% gap there, nor is that necessarily reasonable. But it just feels to me like we need some kind of methodology in here that we can hang our hats on and depersonalize it and just say this is the structure we're looking at. Thank you.
Councilor Park.
It almost never happens that I disagree with my colleague, Councilor Groves, but I will in this case. Not for the idea that we wouldn't want structure. I'm just not sure we can actually do it. And with my following comment, I know that our manager, Sarah, would never, ever in a million years do this. But and I bring it up now because while Councilor Evans is considering his motion, the city manager is entirely in charge of setting the salary of the executives under them. And thus, some maybe, if we said it that the city manager always had to be 10% above them, city manager can, it's some future city manager way in the future may come in and set the executive salary, you know, $1,000 below them and get an instant raise. So I want us to be careful of setting a structure that happens automatically. I still think that future councils are certainly wise enough to figure the right numbers that work for the situation on the ground at the time. But
Okay, we're having a freewheeling conversation here because
Yeah.
Councillor Evans hasn't made a motion yet on the 10%. And I just want to remind you, we also have motions to consider, as the city attorney referenced, setting a range for salary. So we might not adopt that, but that is something we're going to discuss. Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Council President, because I was going to make that point, but before I did, I was going to, shock the room by saying I agree with Councillor Clark. He turned his camera off, so I can't see his reaction. But I'm out of order because I'm not talking to the motion that's on the table. I would like to move to a vote if we could.
Yes, thank you. My sentiments
Camera off 'cause
exactly.
he fell off his chair.
It reverberated throughout the city. All right, we have a motion on the table to set the city manager's compensation to $260,000. Even?
No.
Oh, you showed me the wrong number.
So as I understand it, and you can tell me I am incorrect, but as I understood it,
266?
Counselor Keating, you made a friendly
Yes.
to amend.
Yes. 256.
Yes.
256. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you're okay.
You're 256.
So this is the, this is the motion to amend, the main motion. So what is on the table right now is you have a motion to amend
Okay.
to set the salary at 256.
Mhm.
And Counselor Cleany, don't speak.
No, that's-
Anything else?
No, I'm just teasing.
Okay, so the motion on the table is a motion to amend the original motion to set the amount of compensation at $256,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, just double check. All right.
Thank you.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? None. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
So now you're going to act on the motion as amended.
And now we will vote on the motion as amended. All in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, City Attorney, for helping us through that.
Script, you should have two. Oh, and I'm sorry, and Counselor Evans too. And then also there's two more motions because of the way you divided out the motion that you originally made. You've got kind of two more things for you to consider, and then also as well as council.
Yes. Well, hold on.
We're
Counselor.
gonna do that first and
Yeah,
then
I
go to
think
my
we should.
motion, right?
Well, I think we should consider your motion first because
Okay.
it will might have an impact on the other
Okay.
things. So go ahead. Counselor
So
Evans.
let me, I've been trying to figure this out as we were talking. So my motion would be to set the city manager's salary range at 10% of the highest exec in the city, and that salary range.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that, but to clarify, you said 10% of, I think you meant 10% over.
Over, yeah, over.
Yeah. That would be
So
small.
is Carrie Baraldo is there, and she, Carrie, can you state what I don't have those numbers right in front of me. Can you give what the 10% range would be? So just so I understand, so if you have, just, Carrie, if you can say what the range of the highest paid exec is first, to give folks the understanding of what that range is.
Yes, just 1 second. Okay, so The range would be 189,342 is the entry, and then the max would be 229,112. So that's the range for the highest paid executive.
So Counselor Evans, are you proposing to set
Range at
10%?
10% above the highest exec range, which is that 189 to 229.
So that would set the range below what you just set Sarah's salary at. Because 10% above
Yeah,
229.
you're right. It would be. So it would have to be 10% above the highest, the maximum number that would be for the highest exec.
So that would start your range at 252 for this, for the city manager position.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so then based on the data that you were provided by Carrie, the maximum kind of that median was 281 something. And so you would set the range at 252 to 281.
Yes.
Or some other number.
Or some other number, yes.
Depending on how the salaries move in the future, right?
Okay, so just so I have an understanding of what you're seeking, is the intent of your motion, because right now, annually, you will be, and it's part of her contract, be considering Sarah's employment.
Right.
And her performance and also her salary. So if you're going to be considering it annually, you'll be given the amount of the highest paid exec, if that's something. So
yes,
perhaps just so it could be more flexible, if you said every year that you consider it, you want to know what the highest paid exec is, right, then you all have control over where it sets instead of trying to set a number based on something that.
So then we would just set it annually.
Because correct,
Yeah.
because right now annually you should be doing your merit increase or a discussion of the merit increase annually. So if you're given the 10% above the highest paid exec annually, that will always be part of a discussion that you're having.
What you said, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I want.
Okay. So is there a motion and a second on the table?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Would you make withdraw that motion and say, and have a motion that requires that part of the merit compensation discussion of the council always include the number that's 10% of the highest paid exec?
Yes. Yeah, that would be my motion.
Does the second accept that change?
Second accepts that.
Okay, so the motion on the table now would stipulate that during the annual reconsideration of the city manager's compensation, the council president and vice president would be presented with the highest paid executive salary and the number that is 10% higher than that.
That's what I understand the request being.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and let's have some discussion. So I see Councilor Zelenka and Councilor Clark have their hands up.
Yeah, this is why we shouldn't be crafting these things on the fly. So this policy, we violated the policy. We just violated the policy that you're putting forward. And the way that this is being put forward is it takes out of our hands what the salary is of the city manager and puts it in the hands of HR and whatever the exec salary is for the highest paid exec. And I really agree with my colleague, Councilor Mike Clark. He's still sitting in his chair. I can see it. That we don't want to put ourselves in being in automatic land. We don't want to have things that are automatic. We want to provide guidance to the council for future deliberations. I found that to be much more useful and less hamstringing than what's being proposed here. So may I suggest a friendly amendment that says that council adopts a policy that strives to compensate the city manager at a level that maintains a 10% differential with the highest paid executives?
So just, can I say something real quick? The motion that's on the table right now, as I understand it, is solely a request for information. Am I misunderstanding that, Counselor Evans?
Yeah, it's a request for
It's
information.
right. So
We have the opportunity to set the salary
Right.
at any point that we decide to set it at, because we only have three, employees to deal with: the manager, the municipal court judge, and the police auditor.
So Counselor Evans, the reason I asked that is because I think your friendly was getting at Counselor Evans's prior motion and not how, as he changed it, which was just the request that every year, that annually, the council receive as part of their compensation discussion of the city manager, that 10% above the highest paid exec number. It doesn't have an automatic thing built into it.
It doesn't require them to set it at 10%.
Right.
Right.
So what
We just would get the
Can you
information.
reread the motion, please? Can you read it?
Well, it's not written down anywhere, so I'm doing it by
'Cause
memory.
initially it said set the salary at.
Oh.
And that's problematic.
Sarah has written it down. I will ask Sarah.
So the motion was moved to stipulate during annual reconsideration of city managers' compensation, the president and vice president will get the number of the highest paid executives' salary and the 10% higher number to consider.
Okay. I'm okay with that. That's different than what I heard before. Thanks.
Counselor Clark.
What he said.
Keeping it brief. I like it. Counselor Keating, followed by Counselor Gross.
It's different than what I understood as well. And I hear the intent, and it's similar to what Council President and Vice President already get, so I don't think the motion is needed. And I'm going to vote against it. Just from a values statement, this whole conversation has been unsettling because it's some of the lowest paid wage earners from if you look at our stipend, we're not salaried employees. It's a volunteer elected position with a small stipend. We make $19,500 a year. There are wage earners at the bottom end of this municipal structure that one could argue that the adjustments at that bottom end of the wage scale need the same methodology to adjust accordingly. A pay increase for the lowest wage earners benefit the workforce far greater than codifying an automatic 10% buffer between the CEO, city manager, and the next highest executive. I get what you're getting at in regards to seeking the information. And I understand the level of respect that I think we all share for our city manager and for the position that she rises to meet and exemplifies and goes far beyond every day. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for our city manager. This motion, however, seems a bit superfluous, and I'm uncomfortable voting on any guardrails or automatic or dollar amounts that tie this or any future council's hands. We already get the information. It's not needed. I understand that the shift for informational, but I encourage a no vote. I think it's unnecessary.
Counselor Groves, and then I'm going to call for a vote.
Thank you, Council President. This motion evolved. I mean, it started out more rigid and it ended up not really a policy, more of a guideline. But I will point out that we did not receive this information automatically this time. I think it's a data point that is important to have as we look at this. We still get to call the ball on this. So it's just a matter of trying to make sure we have all the information or as much information as we can when we proceed with setting salary range of our most expensive city employee, and a very good one. Thank you.
Actually, I'm gonna let Counselor Evans have the last word since it's his motion, and then I'll call for a vote.
I don't really have a last
Okay,
word,
then-
so let's vote.
And we'll go for a vote. All right. Does anyone need the motion read again? No. All right. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All opposed? Motion carries 6-2. Thank you very much. So our next motion is regarding the recommendation from our city staff that we establish a salary range for the city manager position. And I'm going to let Council Vice President put that on the table.
Thank you, Council President. So I'm confused. Did we just do that then what would the range be? Would it be 252 to 281?
That is what's in the packet. That doesn't necessarily have to be what your motion says.
The data that was in the packet was just based on, you had the market data, and if you were just going off the minimum and maximum from the market data, the range would be 220,000 to 281, 760.
Okay, then that's where I'll make that motion. Thank you. Move to authorize the council president to execute an amendment to city manager Sarah Maderi's employment contract, establishing a range of $220,000 to $281,760 for the city manager position and for the range to adjust consistent with COLA adjustments for non-represented staff.
Second.
All right, I'm gonna put myself in the queue first because I'd like to see if there's room for a friendly. I know there's gonna be some debate on this motion altogether. So, but I would prefer that the higher range be set at 295,000. Would you accept that as a friendly?
I'd like to hear your rationale beforehand.
Sure. You should I should be getting timed here. Looking at the data that was presented to us, there are city managers who the range is quite a bit higher than the 281. Some go up to 350,000, 355. Now, some of that they don't necessarily have a max salary. That is the salary. And I believe, as we've been talking about staying competitive and attracting high quality candidates for the position, I believe that 281 is too low in terms of a salary range.
Yeah, I'll accept the friendly.
And Jennifer? Yep, okay, thank you. So the motion now has a salary range of 220,000 to 295, and I will call on Councilor Clark, followed by Councilor Semple.
You said 220, and I think you meant 252.
Oh, I apologize. No, what did you?
No, the range is, as informed by Catherine,
it's 220.
220. I had thought like you
220.
did, Mike, because of the number in the AIS and the number we were discussing
Yeah.
last week. So go ahead.
You can set the range at whatever you want. The 220 is just the number off of the data that you received
Right, I
as
get
the minimum.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are bound by are we bound by the charter to do this work on the manager's salary every year as council?
Not by the charter, no, by contract with the city manager.
Right. So we're gonna do this all over again every year anyway, no matter what. Right?
So, yes, every year you will be considering a merit, whether you'll do a performance and evaluation, and then hopefully in closer proximity than we did this year, you will also be having
Right.
a merit increase discussion.
Right, and I'm sure that will go very well. We're all good at this now. I have to say that I haven't heard it yet, but if someone can articulate a virtue for having a range, I might be willing to vote for it. But the only thing it does is constrain us, and we have to have a conversation every year. So why? I don't understand the virtue of a salary range existing for this one position. And I hope somebody can articulate one, otherwise I'm a no vote. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to call on city staff because I believe in the presentation we had last week, there was some justification. So Carrie, if you can offer the reasoning behind including this motion as something for us to consider.
Sure. And whether or not, I guess you would consider this valid, essentially the number one reason is to align with our standard process of how we have all of our other non-represented positions, and that they have ranges. It's usually set within, ranges set within market of what that position should be paid for, and then people move within that range. So essentially, Councilor Clark gets to align with other non-represented employees.
And I'll come back to you, Councilor Clark. Councilor Semple.
Thank you. I think this is unnecessary and superfluous. Times change all the time, inflation, recession, all kinds of things could happen. We can change it every year, what the range is. So I don't think it's of any importance to put an artificial range on this salary. We'll have our merit stuff and what the other execs are making and what's happening in the rest of the country. And I don't see this as useful or necessary. I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Councilor Gross.
Thank you, Council President. Ranges help benchmark across jurisdictional lines and with comparables. Ranges also help when you negotiate a new employee coming in to an organization, depending on their level of experience, educational requirements, and qualifications. For example, when you're, and I don't know city manager positions as well, but when you're dealing with division managers and executive managers, is it somebody coming in that's taking a step up, or is it an executive manager in another similarly situated organization coming across that brings a wealth of experience with them? So it basically is, to answer Councilor Clark's question, it's a tool. It doesn't mean you're bound to that, but it's a tool where you can kind of see the progression when you're lining up with some of these other organizations that do have the ranges. And I mean, even looking at the comparables, and again, I'm not an HR person, but I've been through enough of these processes. There are jurisdictions in the comparables that are very comparable to Eugene, and there's jurisdictions in here where the cost of living is substantially higher. And again, this is a tool where you can do like for like and kind of see the progression. That's how I see it. Thank you.
So I put myself in the queue, and I appreciate Councilor Grove's thoughts there, because I tend to agree. I think when someone is considering whether or not to take a position of the kind of that the city manager, knowing ahead of time that there's this range in which they're likely to see their salary land, I think is important. It gives some certainty. Absolutely, future city councils, this city council next year could change the range or get rid of the range, but I think there is a good rationale. I mean, I think we'd be okay if we didn't do it, but I think there's some good rationale for us setting that range and then allowing future councils, to adjust it as inflation and the market shifts. That would be important. But I think having that tool as part of a recruitment strategy and just a place for council president and vice president to start from when considering compensation, I think has some value. I have Councilor Clark for a second round. Anyone for a first? Councilor Evans.
Yeah, I just want to echo that sentiment. I really think that being able to negotiate within a range is an important concept for us to embrace. It's done all over the country. It's done in a variety of different professions. As an educator, you know, we just negotiated a contract for a new president at Lane. There was a salary range there. There's a salary range for, you know, not just the CEO, but top lead executives throughout the organization. So in order for us to A, remain competitive, and B, to have a negotiating position that we can work from, we need to have a salary range set and be able to be flexible within that range in terms of what compensations we're going to award to a successful candidate.
I have Counselor Zelenka followed by Counselor Keating.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everybody said. So at one hand, it's not necessary because we get this information anyway, but it does provide some structure to future councils, which they can take or not. And it is consistent with the way that we treat other employees. So in that sense, it doesn't, it helps with putting some structure to this particular position. But as Councilor Clark said, the future councils can ignore this advice, which is really what it is. So I don't think it hurts to move this forward. I think it gives a little structure and it makes it consistent. So I'll support it.
Counselor Keating.
I concur with Counselor Clark and Counselor Semple in that the range to me is not needed for this position. I think it's actually beneficial that this particular position is without those parameters. When we need it, let's establish it. We just gave our CEO or city manager essentially around a 10 to 11% raise at $24,000, $232,000 to $256,000. Another $24,000 bumps it up to $280. Another $24,000 takes it far beyond that $295 that's being proposed. So it already in a few years, it's a moot point. So why don't we just create a range at the point we're looking, not tie our hands, and let the manager do their job that's different than any of the other non-represented employees significantly. I think a no vote is if we're not bound by our charter to do this, I think no vote is the common sense vote. The second vote, the next one, is the key that locks in her salary schedule and annual performance evaluation. But this one, to Councilor Semple's point, seems superfluous. And there's an earth-shattering moment. Ready to follow your chair, Councilor. I concur with Councilor Clark. And Councilor Semple.
Yeah.
Jazz hands.
Interesting triangle. Councilor Clark.
Thank you. I agree with Councilor Keating on that. Number one, as to treating the city manager as we do other executive managers and other employees in the city, I don't want to do that. The city manager has, to my mind, my way of thinking, a superiorly different position. They're the ultimate administrative authority before it gets to the elected officials. The buck stops on her desk. I think the expectation set's different. I think the job's different fundamentally. And if you'll look at the schedule they gave us, some of those cities are smaller than ours with similar cost of living, and the numbers are incredibly higher. They're in the high 300s and the high 400s, and I don't want to go there. I think that the range does nothing but limit this council between now and some point where, God forbid, we have an opening in the city manager's position. And then I agree entirely with Councilor Evans and with Councilor Groves that at that time, when we know we have an opening, we should absolutely set a salary range. But until then, I just think it constrains us, and I don't want to do that for future councils. Thank you.
So I'm gonna bring us to a vote here, but I do have a clarifying question. So The motion says execute an amendment to City Manager Sarah Maderi's employment contract. So this does not lock us in necessarily to other potential, when Sarah's ready to retire many, many years from now. This might set a historical precedent, but it's not anything that locks us into maintaining within this range. And the second part of that question is, does this apply to her employment? Her employment contract is on an annual basis. So next, is that correct?
Correct. So it would, it's generally adding a salary range for the city manager position that doesn't exist right now in the contract. So that would get added to the contract.
Okay.
And then only because I heard a couple of references to adjusting for cost of living.
She gets that.
The way the contract's currently written is her salary adjusts COLA for the COLA at the same time and in the same manner. As the motion is made and as the motion was prepared, it would adjust the range also, because for all other non-reps, their salary and their range moves with those COLAs. So as the motion is made, that range would, so just if a COLA let's say you adopt the range and a COLA happens, I just don't want you to be surprised if her range comes back and it's not at 295. It's because the COLA moved.
Was applied to it.
Right, exactly.
Okay. All right. I am going to call for a vote. Does anyone need the motion repeated?
Yes.
All right. Councilor Vice President.
The motion is to authorize the council president to execute an amendment to City Manager Sarah Maderi's employment contract, establishing a range of $220,000 to $295,000 for the city manager position, and for the range to adjust consistent with COLA adjustments for non-represented staff.
Thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. All right, motion passes. Our final motion for this evening, please,
That
Council
would have
Vice
been
President.
fun if the mayor had to break that tie.
She didn't have to do anything this evening except sit in front of her Zoom screen.
Move to authorize the council president to execute an amendment to City Manager Sarah Maderi's employment contract, updating the schedule for Maderi's annual performance evaluation and merit compensation increases.
Second.
Any discussion? Calling for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for the good conversation. We are adjourned.